Hello there. Shit. Hello there, everybody. Welcome to BLT recap and analysis. I'm going to be going through the semifinals and finals matches. Let me just go ahead and go to my channel, update my stuff, and then we'll get started. Okay. And important to note that this week we will be, since spoiler, we did lose the week. I'm also going to be going through what I believe our season kind of amounted to, and like what really matters for us. Slash like what our season really means. Okay, so week semis recap and finals predictions. Okay, so now that we changed all of that, let's get ready. So welcome to BLT recap and analysis for the semifinals recap and finals predictions. As per the usual, I'll be here doing the breakdown. Sorry for not putting out a video earlier. I was quite busy throughout the week, and because tiebreak started, I just decided why not just do everything all at once. So since the week just went up like yesterday and didn't really have much time yesterday, so I decided to just put it together today. So first off, it was the Swampers versus the Hatterines. This matchup was something that we kind of expected a lot of coming into this week, or actually both of the matchups were quite good. But with the Swampers losing one of their big OU players in updated Kanto, and a core piece towards both the tiebreakers and their normal lineup, they were not projected to be like a very strong team, or as strong as they had been showing up to now in the regular season. So it started with the at the top, PG Clouds beat Bandrizzle. While Bandrizzle, oh shoot, sorry. While Bandrizzle did put up like good performances in general throughout the season, he wasn't able to take this win. You'll see notably that Fristo and Ewan were both not active in this lineup, and that's because they got double subbed. And Lugia Numere versus Keeping Icy was the very last match of the game of like the entire week, with Lugia Numere taking the win in a solid game. GXC managed to take his win in UU, very solid. Sensei Axu also managed to win in RU over Dandaman, who while he's been having a great season so far, wasn't able to convert this week. Bad Player beat Confide in NU. And then I'm Just Gray beat Jack in My Box in LC. Doubles was a very solid match as well. All of these very solid matches. And Maple beat Thunderbirds. Dougza beat Thunderbirds. I think a lot of these were expected. Some of the toss-up games, specifically like NU, went in the way of, or like NU as a toss-up game went in the way of Swamperts, and then the OU toss-up game of Peachy Clouds versus Bandrizzle went in the way of Hatterians. And Swamperts had to climb back in it with Lugia Numere picking up a crucial win to bring it to tiebreak. And in the tiebreak, the teams chose UU and NU. I think Hatterians chose UU and then Swamperts chose NU, which is actually like a very surprising pick because I don't really see the Swamperts having a big advantage in NU, even though Bad Player or OK132 is actually pretty good. I don't think he is necessarily your best tiebreak pick. I think there could have been other people who would have secured the win. I think in LC they had a bigger advantage in the I'm Just Great versus Jack in My Box matchup, Personally, that's how I would feel about it. But yeah, they chose NU, and what happened in the tiebreak, I'll go over later after I go over this matchup. So, Reginald beat Blimax in a very solid game, and then Pradhan beat Attribute, also a very solid game. Whereas Mega beat Kather again, and Fellyburn lost to, Fellyburn won in RU versus the Franklin Arstein. Skip Can won in a solid game versus Principal Tacos, and then Shadow Monster. I lost to Excelsior. Personally, I thought that there was like a decent amount of luck, and I also made a really bad play like early in the game. But yeah, I didn't really perform all that well this season, even though I think I brought good teams. I prepped well, and I didn't even make necessarily bad plays a lot of times, but I felt like I couldn't convert in a lot of the end games and wasn't able to maximize my chances in a lot of those situations, and then I wasn't able to win. However, Havens managed to beat up Floss and Mono, and then Cheese picked up a huge win in doubles. I think Shadow Monster brought a really bad team this week, and Cheese managed to convert very easily and picking up that win. So both of these series went into tiebreaker. I actually want to address a post later on with what Rob made a post about what the Snorlax's season is, and I'll give my perspective about where I think we kind of struggled, especially down the stretch, and where I think we could have improved as a team, or just in general throughout the entire process. Kind of similar to how I went through some of the bottom four teams last week, but I'll go through my own season, and then I'll talk about the Swampers briefly. However, it's like very clear to me why they weren't able to succeed. So in the tiebreak, what happened was Cheese opened up the tiebreaker with a very solid win. He brought extremely good team that was just strong in the meta, and with good prep, we managed to just easily take that win. And then in the two OU games, we got very unlucky in both of them. With the first one being that Roginol got his Cinderace missed a lot of moves. He got crit in a few occasions, or like I think one occasion, importantly, and just wasn't able to convert. In like otherwise would have been a very solid victory. He wasn't able to bring that one home, and then Fellyburn also got quite unlucky in what can only be described as an unfortunate turn of events. So while we weren't able to win, it is very unfortunate that we weren't able to win in this tiebreak, because I felt like we did all the right things coming into the tiebreak, and it's just a little bit unfortunate. It is what it is, though, and we'll see how the Rufflets will do in the finals. I think the Rufflets coming this far was unexpected for a lot of people. I think I was one of the only people who were actually like singing their praises after the draft, and I can see kind of where a lot of their success lies. And I think a lot of people underestimated their OU core, and they did perform in this tiebreak, albeit with a lot of luck. And a lot of their other players, I think, have had like decent to strong performances throughout the entire season, and they basically performed exactly how I would expect them to, even though a lot of people would consider a lot of their performances an overperformance. I would say that they basically had up to par performances, and they did a really good job. And I think we should have been better this week in converting our wins, especially in UU and LC. I think if we had won either of those matches, it should have been not too difficult. And then in tiebreak, we did do stuff right, but Pokemon can be Pokemon, and even though you can play better or prep better, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to win every single time. And I think there are times that we could have played a little bit better, and unfortunate, but that's basically how our season ends. Moving on to the other tiebreak, though. Yeah, so anyway, moving on to the other tiebreak. The Hatterians versus the Swamperts. Ewan played Frisso and beat him in a very solid game. Not much luck in either direction. And then Confide beat Bad Player. I referenced this earlier, but I think it's very interesting that they decided to pick NU because I don't really see Bad Player as having that much of an advantage over Confide. Confide has a lot more overall experience in tournaments, and that matters actually a lot in tiebreaks when the pressure is on. Especially when you're playing as the second game, already down 0-1, you have a lot of pressure on your in that game, and sometimes the nerves can get to you. But yeah, the Hadrians managed to solidly take that 2-0. I think it was very clear that the Hadrians were at a pretty massive advantage throughout the entire series and in the tiebreak. In my opinion, Ewan being a very strong player means that he can match Frisso, and I would say that that matchup, although I would have favored Frisso slightly, like Ewan is definitely good enough to win, and he prepped well and played well in the game, and he managed to take the win. And then I think in the other two slots, the Hadrians are pretty either competitive or just favored. I mean, GXD is just clearly favored in UU, and then Confide is either slightly favored or at least very competitive in this matchup. So I don't really see the Swampers as having very strong of a tiebreak, especially after Update Kanto got banned basically. So I think they would have had a better shot if they had chosen to take maybe even second OU, even though they had lost that slot in Peachy Clouds versus Bad Drizzle Bowl. I would have still tried to take that maybe. I just don't see NU as really being much of an advantage. So unfortunate, but they couldn't make it even though they had such a fantastic regular season. And that's not to say that it was really surprising or anything, or it's an underperformance. It's just how a lot of circumstances go. So let's talk about what this season really meant for us. So Rob, one of the managers for the Hadrians, wrote up a relatively long post about, he did it for all of the teams, but a lot of what he wrote was about us as a team. So first off, this first pick, it's like I don't really see this as really being true because while I haven't shown the most results in Smogon tiers, I also have had good results in VGC. A lot of these things don't really account for a lot of my results as well because, for example, in LC, which is a tier I played, I have had extremely good results in Gen 7 LC, and the meta after DLC was basically the same as Gen 7, meaning that I would have been considered one of the best players had this been Gen 7 LC because I had like a second place in LC Open and multiple high finishes outside of that. So I don't think it's really accurate, this portrayal of me, but like OU seasonal also and like these double seasonal, like they just don't really mean much of anything. And then 3 and 5 in DPL doesn't really mean that much either, to be honest. But yeah. Anyway, some of the stuff that he says here, like relatively true, but in general, you shouldn't view it like this because the fact that I was backing Cheese should have been indicative of like how much faith that we had in him like as a player. And then me and Cheese together as a prepping unit, we had definitely by far the best prep of this tournament. We were just very clearly better than every other team in terms of reading the meta and being able to prep good teams. And although Cheese did lose the one game versus Z-Strats, who also has had a very good tournament so far, I would say that me and Cheese definitely showed that we can outperform every single other team in doubles like very clearly. So a lot of the value is like understated here because like, well, I mean, you wouldn't know because if you don't like, if you're not part of the team chat, if you don't really know the environment, then that's not something that you would consider. But yeah, LC I would definitely say is not really like a weakness at all for us. This is something that he states somewhere later that LC and UU were kind of weaknesses for us. But I would say that that's not really true. While in LC, I would definitely consider myself probably the third best LCer overall in this tournament. And even though I definitely got outperformed by some of the players, it was also because of varying factors. For example, versus Mikav, I got heavily lucked, and it's just like a lot of the games were just not winnable, or the game was just not winnable because of some luck. And then like, yeah, okay, technically I lost like a 50-50 or like a few 50-50s at the end, but like I would have needed to win basically 4 50-50s, which I didn't need if I had gotten some of the stuff that I needed earlier in the game. For example, like flame body burning on the very first high jump kick on Yinfu in that game. So like I could have easily been like 5-1 with making, or even 6-0, making the exact same plays and just having better RNG. So like I don't really see our draft as ever being an issue, and I would say the same for Kather. Kather wasn't like didn't have the correct read on the meta in like some weeks, but in general he brought very good teams. He prepped a lot, and he's been doing well in opens and been playing very well in general. So like I don't really see those as being weaknesses for us. And I would say like our biggest draft weakness was the fact that Attribute, who is someone that we put a lot of faith in, didn't perform as well as we would have liked him to. And that's not to say that it's necessarily his fault, because we had like a huge we didn't have like a way to really support him with like a lot of good teams. And I think OU was really our biggest weakness, especially in the later weeks. It kind of showed that our OU core wasn't as strong, but that even then, like we did, that was kind of our expectation coming into the draft, with having really, really strong lower tiers, with like almost every slot being extremely competitive, with the only one really being maybe questionable is like Principal Tacos and NU, but like every other slot we had extremely competitive lower tiers, like Kather and UU, Fellyburn and RU, She's in doubles, myself and LC, and yeah, all of those tiers are extremely powerful. And so, oh, and Havens and Mono, of course. And so, um, yeah, like all of those things were just like factors that we knew coming into the draft, and I felt like our draft was already at the very top, and I still feel that way. Like I feel like if we had played this exact same draft, we definitely, this is a championship level roster for sure. Um, so I like very clearly believe that the season was not really a draft issue. I don't really see many ways that we could have improved the draft. Like we could have tried to replace Attribute with someone else, but like realistically, it wasn't really there wasn't really anybody else who would be able to replace him, because some of the other OU players who did perform well would have been either not as good on our team, for example, like Pradhan, or like been a toxic personality, which is like something that I specifically wanted to avoid. So because of that, I want to, or I would say that is like very much not our issue. So in the actual games themselves, I think like we did very well in the regular season. We basically got to the point where I was like happy with our record. Like we gave up the last week. Yeah, we went into the tiebreak or into the playoffs as the third seed, but second, third seed doesn't really matter much. So you know, we got basically where I wanted. Basically, just get into the playoffs. I don't really care what seed. I don't really see there, especially towards the later weeks. I didn't really see as any of the teams as being teams that we wanted to avoid coming into playoffs. So it didn't really matter that much to me. So yeah, like not really much of an issue, to be honest. I think really the only um, yeah, the only thing that we could have potentially done better maybe is to give some of the subs more of a chance. I think like some of the roster decisions were made like even before the season started, but we'll see. Or I shouldn't say, but we'll see. But like some of those players maybe could have gotten more of a shine, and we could have used those slots a little bit better. But like other than that, I don't really have that many regrets throughout the season. The main issue was that in semis we were not able to convert on some of the should or must win matchups, like the UU and LC specifically that I mentioned earlier. And then in tiebreak, ultimately it was because of luck that we weren't able to make the finals. And I think like if we had played out this exact 8 game series again in like 8 game series again, and you know had it gone to tiebreaker, play out a tiebreaker again, and we took a lot of the same steps, we definitely could have easily won. So like I don't really have any regrets in terms of how we really approached most of the last weeks either. I would just say that sometimes you don't always win as the best team. or like not always, the best team doesn't always win, or the better team doesn't always win, I should say. Um, but yeah, like I would say that um, there isn't that much that I regret coming out of this season. I had like a great time. A lot of the presences in the team were very good, and you know, it was nice to be able to team up with Trace and some of my close friends like Cheese again, and I had a great time overall. However, I do wish that we could have gone further. Like, I definitely think that we should have been a championship level roster, but um, it just wasn't didn't end up happening. So yeah, like I think um, very clearly the issues were with not getting enough support in OU, especially in later weeks. Um, this is really like the only thing that was like a big issue that we could have tried to fix, I guess. And then the other thing is like my record was not as good as it could have been. I think going 3-3 in LC for me is like a really big underperformance, considering that I should have been putting up much bigger number or much better numbers. And that is to say that some of those games were because of luck, or if I had better RNG in all three of those games, or not to say like even necessarily better in the sense that like okay get like crits every turn or anything, but like if I got average luck in all of my games, I believe I would probably would have won. So it is just really unfortunate. Like in the first game, or the first game I lost against Mikav, it was like, flame body burns. There was like multiple misses or whatever. The second game, I got crit in a very crucial end game turn. But that one was like more excusable, I guess, um, because I didn't play that well leading up to that point. But yeah, I still should have won uh, because like in most cases I would have beaten the Poniard with my Porygon. I was basically like 2 turns away from doing so, and then yeah, didn't get it. And then in the last week I got like very crucial, like quite a few crucial misses, um, and yeah, it ended up screwing me over. So unfortunate to be honest, but it is what it is. Like don't think I played the best. I think there was definitely places that I should have improved, and that's just like my perspective. I think like some of my team members also had issues with that, but I don't really regret like the draft or whatever. So like here it says like outside of a real lack of a UULC main, technically I would be like it would be wrong to say that like having a main is necessarily better, because like for example Kather is better than most of the UU mains in the tournament, and I am better at LC than most of the LC mains in the tournament, right? So like even though we aren't maining the tiers, like that's not really a real weakness. The main weakness for us was that we were not able to convert in OU, and there was some luck down the stretch. I think that if I were to do it again, I would try to convert on some of those OU, convert a little bit more in the OU prep department specifically, and try to help my team in that way. But other than that, not really too much to say. So let's move on to the last thing that I wanted to talk about, which is, of course, finals predictions. Starting with Bluemax versus Ewin. Ewin has had a great tournament so far. There's no reason no reason for me to believe that Ewin won't win here. Prodhan versus Future Clouds. I think Prodhan has had very strong performances in the last couple weeks, and I have all the reason to believe that he will win this, even with Future Clouds winning last week. I will say Prodhan, I think, is a slightly better player overall, and I'll favor him slightly. I think GXC very clearly favored in UU. Despite Oris Mega's win last week, I think GXC is better. I think Sensei Axie versus Arsenine is another crucial matchup. Arsenine still hasn't really gotten out of his slump yet. If he can, then maybe this game will be competitive, but Sensei Axie should be favored here. And NU, Confide versus Skip Can, I think Skip Can is much better here. He's been much more consistent throughout this entire tournament and has been having a great performance. So I'd favor him there. And then I'll favor Excelsior in LC as well. Skiriku has had a really bad tournament, and Excelsior has been playing solid, albeit I think that his team selection is very bad. I do think that won't hold him back enough to lose this game, but I do think that if this Hattering's one like a win, like I would say LC is going to be a very crucial game. I think Z-Strats is just very clearly better in doubles right now. Shadow Monster has had a lot of trouble adapting to the meta, and I think his team selection has been extremely bad. And all the games that he's lost have been almost always off team preview, basically. His choice of teams has been exceptionally bad in the last few weeks. And then I'll favor Floss slightly in mono, although this game was going to be very close. I think Floss has had an overall better performance this tournament. And I think while the players are very close, I would say that Floss is slightly favored just based on recent results. So with that, that would be, 4 wins to each team, and that would bring it to a tiebreaker. If that ends up happening, I'll just cover the tiebreaker. I'm not going to do a separate video just for the small tiebreaker, similar to how I did it this week. But with that said, I think that this matchup is actually quite even. The key matchups to look at in terms of which ones can really swing this potential tiebreaker, would be LC and Mono. I think that those are the two matchups that are very close for one reason or another. But I think in LC, Excelsior, while he's having a very strong performance so far and is undefeated, he also has a lot of weaknesses, in my opinion. Like his team preparation has been extremely predictable / even bad at times. And like clearly last week, in my opinion, I just brought like a much better team in terms of like matchup, and I just wasn't able to convert. But and then in mono, I think both players are extremely close. And okay, and so Skiriku could potentially take advantage of that. And then in mono, I think the matchup is extremely close, and both teams could take it. So that's one that you can look at as well. Doubles is another matchup that I would say is kind of close, but I think Z-Strats has been performing significantly better than Shadow Monster in the more recent weeks, or just like throughout this entire tournament. Shadow Monster at 4 and 5, but also notably Shadow Monster hasn't really shown up in post like this DLC meta, which has been continually evolving. Although granted, 3 of his losses have also been to Cheese. So there is that. I would say that other than that, that's about it. I would say that this matchup is going to be very close. I would love to see it go to tiebreaker. I think it would be very interesting. Actually, let me leave a watch here. And I want to give a quick shout out to all my teammates on the Snorlax, because I hope, I don't know if they're still watching, but especially to Trace and to Cheese, who I had like a great time playing with throughout this entire tournament. So that said, I'll sign off for this week, and I'll do a recap of the finals next week. And I'll see you guys then in another episode of BLT Recap for finals. And yeah, if you're watching on Twitch, leave a follow. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a like and subscribe.